Today on the podcast, we are shifting views about hypnotherapy. What is hypnotherapy? How does it work? And can it really change people's lives? My guest on the show says absolutely yes. Craig Meriwether is a clinical hypnotherapist. He works with clients, helping them reduce anxiety, boost their confidence, and really helping them achieve their full potential in their personal and professional lives. Is hypnotherapy effective? Let's find out. This is Shifting Views with Willis. Okay, Craig Meriwether, welcome to the podcast. Great to have you.
Hi, Willis. It's really great to be on your show. I know you change perspectives, people's ideas on different situations and circumstances. And there's a lot of misconceptions about hypnotherapy. So I'm really excited to talk with you today.
To cut straight to it, for me, hypnotherapy, and I think for a lot of people, when they think of hypnotherapy, they immediately think of those kind of TV shows and stage shows and getting people dancing like a chicken and all of that kind of stuff. But in reality, that's not really what it's about.
Yes and no. Hypnotherapy is all about intention. And it's not that a hypnotherapist or a hypnotist can control anybody. They can't. In fact, what it is giving back control. Because really, somebody coming to a hypnotherapist, and basically we all are hypnotized in some form or another. Let's look at the example of anxiety. Some people may know exactly why they're feeling anxious or maybe angry or overwhelmed or worried. But a lot of people may be experiencing anxiety and not understanding what the triggers are. So they're literally changing their physiology. Their brain has to start creating adrenaline and cortisol. They literally have to change the chemistry within their brain, creating molecules called neuropeptides that send the message of anxiety. They're literally sending 300% more blood to the big muscles of their arms to fight because they put themselves in the stress response, the fight or flight response, 300% more blood to the big muscles of their legs to escape the situation. But they may not even understand what the trigger is that's causing that reaction. They've hypnotized themselves to unconsciously react to some sort of trigger in their external environment. They're already hypnotized. And whether maybe it's something that happened a long, long time ago, maybe there was some trauma growing up, maybe there's some abuse or some other situation that happened a long time ago, or maybe it happened last week. It's your body is reacting to something because it feels it's in danger. So in a sense, you're already hypnotized. So often, a lot of this work is just dehypnotizing people. I can't make anybody do anything they don't want to do. That's why smoking cessation is not 100% guarantee. I can't make people quit smoking. I can't go into bars and to casinos and just wavy, snap my fingers. Everybody stops smoking. I can't go into prisons and hypnotize everybody to be an upstanding, law-abiding citizen. I can't get Elon Musk to write me $1 billion check. I can't hypnotize people to do things they don't want to do. So really this comes down to what is your intention? And if you want to come and stop smoking, the intention is to create a healthier life, save a lot of money. And so your intention is to stop smoking when you come into a session. I can't make you then hypnotize you to rob a bank and then we're going to go split the money. That's not your intention and probably not your, within your morals. So this work is really about accessing your own power, the power of your subconscious mind. That sounds fancy and maybe a little kind of new agey in terms of the language and the way it's phrasing. But really what we're talking about is the placebo effect. And a lot of people already know about the placebo effect. The kind of famous example of the placebo effect is when a pharmaceutical company is doing research on new medication, let's say high blood pressure medication. Half the group being tested with this medication has to have the sugar pill, a placebo that does nothing, because they know mind will heal the body. They literally have to account for that within their research. And so let's say they're doing high blood pressure medication, half the group gets a sugar pill. Let's say 30% of those people get better through mind alone. They've literally healed themselves, being tricked, but they're healing themselves through mind. The other half is getting the real medication. Let's say 40% get better. They have to subtract 30% from that group that gets the real medication because maybe they healed themselves through mind as well. And so really only 10% got better on the real medication. That's good enough. We'll put it on the market at $50 a pill.
Yeah,
And the
yeah.
reason they're doing this, and the head scratcher would be, well, why aren't we showing people how to heal with mind? How more people got better in this example using mind. Really, what this work is tapping into your own power to heal. And whether that's emotional healing or a mindset healing, you have some limiting beliefs about yourself, or
Mm.
maybe even a physical healing. Now, this isn't to say this, it cures cancer or anything like this, but it's a great adjunct to when people are healing. Harvard did a study about broken legs and got people with the same kind of break in their leg. Of course, they're all wearing casts. They've all been to the doctor. They've got the x-rays, they've had the MRIs, and they all had the casts on their leg. What they added to half the group was hypnotherapy. And what Harvard found is that the people that also used hypnotherapy healed 40% quicker than the people who just had a cast on their legs and went about their day. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
you can accelerate healing. You can create, of course, peace and calm and relieve the anxiety because you're the one creating the anxiety. And that's not to say it's your fault. It's not to say it's fair and it should happen. And that trauma that maybe happened maybe even 40 years ago was fair. And it's not to blame the victim, but it's your body, it's your mind that's creating that anxiety or that fear or that anger or that rage. And probably all unconsciously. And it
Yeah.
was probably installed maybe by a child under great duress, but you're the one who installed it. And that becomes actually very empowering because
Mm.
if you're the one who installed it, granted unconsciously and through duress, but if you're the one who installed it, that means you can uninstall it. That means you can change it and do something else with it. And that's the power of this work. Now, you started off, this is kind of a long answer to maybe somewhat of a short question, but you mentioned the entertainment side of things. And let me start off by saying every single person that gets up on that stage volunteered to be there. The hypnotist is not making anybody get up there. He has to do a good show. He or she has to do a good show. People paid good money to be entertained. So they're going to get entertained. Who's going to be the best candidate? Somebody who really wants to be up on that stage. And so
Yeah.
they bring a bunch of people, 15 people up on stage who have volunteered, and not the person who's kind of halfway raising their hand, but the people who are excited. So they bring them up on stage and they start doing little filters to make sure they're a good candidate for this kind of show. One of the things they may do is like pretend that your hands are super glued together and you can't pull them apart. Now just try as hard as you can to pull your hands apart. And everybody's like struggling and they can't do it. And then one person does this. They break their hands apart. They're off the stage. They're not going to be a
Yeah.
good candidate to entertain. So the
Yeah, sure.
intention of everybody on that stage is to entertain. And that's why they dance like Michael Jackson. That's why they sing like Elvis Presley. That's why they quack like a duck, because they want to. It may seem ridiculous and insane to us to want to have to do that, but uh, they're an exhibitionist. They're an extrovert.
Yeah.
They just want to have fun. Maybe they
Yeah,
had a
Craig,
couple.
can I just
Sure.
talk about just a little bit about that because it sort of really interests me. So I kind of want to just break some of the taboos around that kind of
Yeah,
hypnotherapy, around the
absolutely.
entertainment bit, being able to quote unquote put people to sleep with a click of a finger. Is that really actually happening, or is this power of persuasion? Is the person kind of claiming to fall asleep, but actually is fully conscious and aware of what's going on?
Yes and no. So the person is always consciously aware, with the exception of maybe when you put somebody into what is known as the Esdell state. And that's a coma-like state that they actually still use for surgery. So
Yeah.
you can put somebody so far into a trance-like state, it looks like they're in a coma. And then you can do surgery if somebody is allergic to the anesthetic. It was actually developed by James Esdale, who was a British doctor who moved to India in the early 1800s. And not having any fancy hospitals or anesthesia, he started using this deep trance state. It was actually brought back to England, and another doctor, James Braid, started using it in the early 1800s. Needing a word to describe it, he decided to name it after the Greek god of sleep, who is Hypnos. And so he
Right.
named this state hypnosis. And so over the course of the last, whatever, 100 200 years, this word has grown to encompass all sorts of states. Now, that whole thing of like, yelling at somebody and snapping in their face and telling them to sleep. One, if it's done for a TV show, like any sort of kind of magic-like show, it's quite possible that person's a plant or, an actor who has
Sure.
rehearsed what we're going to do. But there is a way to get people into a rapid trance state. And if you ever notice that kind of thing, when somebody's like yelling at somebody to sleep right in their face and they seem to go catatonic and fall over, it's
Mm.
because there's a mechanism within the brain that when you jolt somebody, you mess with their equilibrium. And you've never
Yeah.
noticed when they do that, they're usually pulling them. They're shaking their hand or something, then they kind of pull them. And if
Yeah.
you ever
Yeah.
had that experience, maybe you or people who are watching had the experience of they're deep asleep and all of a sudden they jolt awake and they feel like they were falling.
Yeah.
Well, that's what you're trying to do to the person is you're messing with their equilibrium. And when you do that, the brain freezes and starts looking for information. What they're
Sure.
looking for is the command to either retreat or move forward or to hide or to run or to fight. They're
Mm.
looking for someone to command them. If they don't get that command within 2 or 3 seconds, they're just going to panic or run or do whatever they need to do. But they're
Yeah.
looking for orders. And so that's when you have them and you can jolt them and say, sleep. And sleep means something to the human body, to the mind. And they also, there's a certain extent, especially when cameras are on you, you want to follow. You want to
Sure.
follow along
Sure.
with what's going on. So whether they're faking it or stuff, but you're always consciously aware of what's
Yeah.
going on. With, of course, the exception of when you're doing some extraordinary work like surgery.
Yeah.
But
Sure. Sure.
that work is really great for triage if
Mm.
somebody's in the emergency room and panicking and in shock. That's a great way to get somebody into a calmer state is to do those rapid inductions like you see on the TV shows.
Yeah.
It's also great for sports.
Mm.
You have these players making 50 million dollars here in America, 50 million pounds over on your side of the pond there, and they're not playing well. They're not in their giving peak performance. They're hesitating. Maybe they're not. They have a lack of confidence. A lot of teams right now, whatever the sport may be, are hiring either hypnotherapist or a sports psychologist, and they'll bring them off the field and they'll do a rapid induction because they have rapport with each other. They know each other. They've
Sure.
worked with each other, so they can do this in front of 50,000 people
Yeah.
and the cameras and the excitement of it all. Put them back in, get them into a state where they can just talk to them and say, I know those last few misses for the shots you took were frustrating, but you can move back into that state that you have practiced so often, moving into a state where you can work at peak potential and peak performance, snap and get them back on the field within 3 or 4 minutes. And now they're playing back at their highest abilities.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's sort of this thing where it's sort of a trick, but it's sort of not. It's that unfortunate thing of I wish they would have called it something else. Uh,
Yeah.
Hypnosis could be the entertainment side of it, and transformational mind reset is what I do or something.
Yeah.
And it's just that because of what people see on the shows, and it's exciting and it's fun. And back in the day here in the United States, we had Johnny Carson on late night TV, and he'd have the hypnotist on, and somebody would I think even Johnny Carson did it himself once. He was spread between two chairs like a
Mm.
board and just stiff, and you
Mm.
could put weights and stand on him and things like this. And it's
Mm.
extraordinary because it works. But again,
Yeah.
it's the intention of what the person wants. If you're an athlete and you want to work at your peak performance, but you're having a bad game, a bad day, if you want to be on TV, and so all your friends can play, hey, I saw you on TV, or if you want to heal, it's all about your intention.
It's really interesting to me, and I find, I mean, it sounds like, just to kind of sum up what you was just saying there, it sounds like a couple of things to me that run through my head. One is a power of persuasion. There's an element of power of persuasion that it sounds like to me, because maybe not power of persuasion, but a reinforcement. Maybe you're saying the person wants to do or feels the need to do, whether they want to stop smoking, they want to score more goals, they want to do whatever it is that they want to
Yeah.
achieve, and you're kind of helping them tap into that thinking, that feeling of being able to do that, and removing the barriers that are stopping them from doing that. So that's one side. But the other side, where you was just talking about there, where you're essentially jolting people into a state. I almost think of that like almost, the saying, like a deer in headlights.
Yeah.
That moment of shock, and it throws me back to a story of when I was very, very young. I ran across a main road, and a car, it must have missed me by inches. It had to slam on, it stopped. But in that moment, it happens. And I remember it to this very day. I swear to you, everything went slow motion in that
Yeah.
few seconds. Genuinely, when it, or what I felt, went into slow motion. So it's like I was running through treacle or something. I couldn't get across the road. Everything slowed down. Everything was heightened. It was this moment of shock.
Yeah.
Now my logical mind as an adult looks back and says, well, okay, well, that's kind of like the deer in headlights thing. It's like a shock, a jolt, something, and your brain's trying to figure out what to do, which is kind of what you was just describing there. But it sounds like to me, when you're whether it's for TV or a stage show or whatever, or even, in a clinical setting, if you're putting people in that kind of state, you're intentionally kind of trying to force them out of almost like a logical state, so that they don't know how to react. You're trying to, I don't know how best to describe it, kind of shake out the logic of them almost.
I understand what you're saying, and I think to a certain extent you're correct. But you can also do this with a person fully aware and alert. This
Yeah.
is the thing of a doctor. Let's say somebody has appendicitis, they need their appendix out, and the doctor's talking to him right before surgery. So the surgery is going to go really, really smoothly, really easily. This is a really simple surgery to do, but you're going to be in a lot of pain during recovery over the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
That's a form of persuasion. This is an authority figure. They're in their white coat. They got the pins in the pocket. They got the stethoscope around their neck. They're about to do some extraordinary healing work for you and save your
Mm.
life. But they're also giving you a command. They're influencing you and persuading you to create pain. Now, you could also, the doctor says, now a lot of people find that you will recover in a calm and peaceful manner, and your body will heal without any sort of discomfort. Now, the way I said that was a lot of people pause. All right, a lot of people find that pause, you will heal in a manner of that moves into a peaceful, calm state of mind and body. And so it's a way of influencing and persuading somebody. Now, they may have some sort of secondary gain to being in a lot of pain because they get attention, they get love. Maybe they're had a lot of brothers and sisters growing up, and so the only way they could get attention from mom was when they were sick or when they were in pain. And so
Mm.
there may be secondary gain to being in a lot of pain. So it doesn't work all of the time. This isn't like a
Sure.
100% guarantee, but you can help influence people by wondering, how you are going to find a way to create the best life ever.
Yeah, sure.
And so you can use language, even with their eyes wide open. You could be in a crowded
Mm.
airport, a crowded restaurant, and use this kind of conversational influence, conversational hypnosis. Of a lot of that work developed by Milton Erickson here in America, and a lot of other great people. And just even with people's eyes open, you can influence. And that's why it's so fascinating about television and the news. We were talking
Mm.
before we started about the anxiety of just, what's going on in the world,
Yeah.
and listening to how it's reported to you.
Mm.
Are facts just being reported to you, like the sky is blue today?
Mm.
Or is our opinions, sometimes it's very obvious that our opinions are being shoved down your throat. Other times it can be more subtle in the
Yeah.
way language is used, and it's done on purpose
Yeah. Yeah.
because really what we're looking at is brainwave state. And at least here in America, the famous ones we learned about were beta, alpha, theta, and delta when we were going to school. I know there's other sub versions of all those, and plus gamma and all these other ones. But the famous ones we learned about in school are beta, alpha, theta, and delta. And it's basically how fast the neurons in your brain are firing at any given time, taking a thought, feeling, an emotion, an action, walking down the street, or drinking a glass of water. You're firing brain cells in a pattern that have all
Yeah.
linked together, and they move in a way from back to front to back again. And you and I, Willis, we're like having a conversation, we're discussing, we're learning new things about the world and about mind and consciousness and having this wonderful discussion. And so we're in the beta brainwave state. We're in consciousness. We're firing
Yeah.
about 18 cycles per second. Now, let's say I'm back in high school math class here in America, and I'm taking notes and I'm in consciousness. I'm focusing because I've got to do well in the test. I got to pass this class. And so I'm writing down notes, I'm paying attention. And then all of a sudden I just get really bored because it's math and I can't take this anymore. And I just start staring off the side and I just start looking out the window and I start
Yeah.
daydreaming. I start thinking about the future. I start thinking about how fun the weekend's going to be, or maybe I start thinking about the past and how fun that vacation my family took, last summer. And I've moved inward. I've turned off the external world, and I've moved inward. I've moved into a daydreamy state. I've just slowed down my brainwave state to about 12 cycles per second. And pretty soon, my eyes are going to get heavy, and I'm going to start nodding my head down. And I'm not really asleep, but I'm not really awake either. I'm in
Yeah.
that really
Yeah.
luscious, right before you fall asleep, right as you're waking up in the morning, kind of
Yeah.
daydreamy state called theta. I'm firing about 6 cycles per second. Pretty soon I might be asleep at firing at 1 or half cycle per second, but the teacher sees me and says, Craig, why don't you come up here and do the problem on the board? And I
Mm.
jolt awake and I'm looking around, everybody's staring at me, and I'm looking at the board. I don't know how to do that equation. I hadn't seen it before. And now I'm embarrassed and I'm stressed. And now I'm firing about 25, 30 cycles per second because I'm in the stress response. And
Yeah.
so just in that little bit of time, maybe 6, 7 minutes, I've altered my state of consciousness 3 or 4 times just by being bored in high school math class. And you may have experienced this at a meeting, or maybe just waiting for a friend at a restaurant or a cafe. And some people have that experience of driving home.
Yeah.
And at the last 8 blocks, right before you arrive home, in the last 8 blocks, your mind starts thinking about that thing you got to do on the weekend, or you got to get that PowerPoint presentation together for the big meeting next week.
Mm.
And you start thinking about those stuff, and all of a sudden you're in your driveway or in your parking spot, and you don't
Yeah.
remember the last 5 or 6 blocks. And it's
Mm.
because your conscious mind started thinking about something else, something in the future, maybe remembering something in the past, and your subconscious mind, that unconscious part of your mind took over. Just like it
Yeah.
knows how to tie your shoes, how to ride a bicycle, how to walk down the street without falling over. It knows how to drive home, probably because you've lived there for several years. So 365 days a year, you've driven home thousands of times. So it
Yeah.
knows how to drive home. So you put yourself in a hypnosis trance state by
Yeah.
you're slowing down brainwave state into the alpha brainwave state. So this is something we do all day long. Whether
Yeah.
we're watching, TV puts you in the hypnosis trance state. Watching TV puts you in the alpha brainwave state, a very influential trance state. And everybody who makes commercials, all the marketing people, all the politicians, all the news people
Yeah.
know that you're in a very influential state of mind when you're watching TV. And so this is a state that we're very familiar with. Everybody can do it because
Yeah.
everybody finds themselves in that state of being bored and just daydreaming about something else, or thinking about something that happened in the past. That's all we're doing. And
Yeah.
so it's not that we're doing anything to you that's new or different. We're just using what you're already doing. We're just doing it on purpose. And
Yeah.
the intention to heal, or to change and transform in positive ways, because you want to. And again,
Yeah.
it's not that I can just walk up to somebody on the street like you see maybe on the TV shows with your man there, and just like snap and tell somebody to sleep. You just say, "What? Excuse me? What are you doing? Get away from me." It's all been, pre-planned, and their intention is to follow what this person is going to say. They may even
Yeah.
recognize, "Oh, that's the guy who yelled at you to sleep, so I'm going to do that."
Sure.
You know.
Sure. So
So
there's that persuasion element, isn't there?
yeah,
Yeah, I just want to tap into, but we will move on from this, Craig, because there's other bits I want to ask you about, actually, about what you do and how it helps people. But just reflecting on some of the points that you've just been speaking about there, certainly 1,000 times I've definitely driven home and forgotten that I've driven home.
yeah,
It happens to me all the time because my mind, people say, I'm thinking about so many different things, and that happens all the time. And you think, I have no idea where the last 20 minutes went, but somehow I
yeah,
ended up here. So I can definitely relate to that. I'm very much in support of you touched upon earlier about um, the power of the mind to heal and the effects that it can have physically on you. And I'm really interested. I'm a musician, and I'm really interested in the power of music. And I've done some podcasts recently on this, about how you can use music to to create behavior change, but also how to make people feel different, act different. And there's some people who I had on the podcast who use it in a medical sense, and they use it to reduce
sure,
pain, anxiety, and they call it like the digital drip. And they use certain BPMs of music to do different things. And the effect is just immense. It's just like the
yeah,
science on it is clear as day. It shows exactly what it does. My point is there's that power of kind of mental healing, if you like, which is beyond like a physical intervention of, say, a medicine or something like that. So I do believe that. And I remember many years ago, I was in hospital having some knee work done, and there was a patient, an older man, that was in the bed opposite to me. And every single day when he woke up in that hospital bed, he got out of bed and he got dressed. And like most of the other people on the ward all stayed in their hospital gowns, and just kind of laid in bed all day. And he insisted absolutely on not doing that. And I realized at that time, he was like, by doing that, I'm allowing myself to be ill. By getting dressed and kind of functioning, and going and buying a newspaper from the hospital shop or whatever, he was behaving normally. He was living, he was moving. So he still needed to be in hospital, but his mindset wasn't that I'm here as a sick person.
yeah,
And for him, he might as well have been in a hotel or something. And I just found that so interesting, and that kind of reinforcement. And my parents used to say to me all the time when I was feeling ill, they'd say, like, do something, be active. If you allow yourself to sit there and say, I'm sick, I'm not well, unless you're particularly physically really ill, but just generally, if you're feeling under the weather or
yeah,
whatever, you'll make yourself feel worse because you're telling yourself you're sick. You're sitting there saying, oh, I'm sick. I really am in pain. This really hurts, blah, blah, blah. Whereas when I found I've distracted myself by being up and about, doing something, moving my mind into some other world, I'm still sick, but I'm not feeling as ill. There's kind
right,
of like that separation. So I guess my point is, I just really find it fascinating, the power of the mind, how you can use
yeah.
that to inform physically what's going on. And I guess that's what you're really tapping into. That's what you're about.
Yeah, exactly correct. And you have a brilliant example, uh, because it's mindset that'll help you heal faster, just like that, the example of the broken legs and the Harvard study. And using mindset, okay, it didn't happen overnight. Their legs didn't
Mm.
heal overnight, but they did heal, 40% faster. They got their casts off in 5 weeks instead of 8 weeks. So you can actually use mind. This is adjunct therapy. So yeah, if I'm in a car accident, take me to the hospital. If my appendix is about to burst, take me to the emergency room. But what else can you do? There's some other studies, research done that showed that a half an hour hypnosis session before surgery lowered anxiety levels by 56%.
Mm.
Otherwise, anxiety levels were raised by 42% just by the nervousness of about to be cut open and going into surgery. So, a half an hour hypnotherapy session right before surgery lowered anxiety rates by 56%, meaning, therefore, their heart rate is lower, their blood pressure is lower. Therefore, there wasn't as much bleeding. Surgery took less time, and
Sure, sure.
they were out of the hospital sooner. Yeah. And so instead of 3 days, maybe they're out in a day and a half. And in and of itself, maybe they're only the hospital saving like 8,000, $10,000 here in America, maybe 10,000 pounds over there in Great Britain. But that's if you think about how many people are getting surgery today, let
Yeah.
alone, just there maybe in London or all of the UK, or all of America. How many people get surgery today times 365 days a year? We're looking at hundreds of millions of dollars in savings because of this one half an hour hypnosis session. So there's like
Yeah.
great money to be made by at least the insurance companies and maybe in the hospitals. I mean, we're all, at least in America, we're just going to have the same rates for insurance and deductibles and all that. But there's
Mm.
big money to be made by allowing this new, it's not even new, but this modality to be accepted. And what's interesting here in America, hypnosis is accepted and approved by the American Medical Association and the Medical Psychological Association back in the 1950s. So this isn't new stuff. The research is out there showing that this works. And
Yeah.
and the unfortunate thing is this conversation we've been having about the entertainment side of it, it really kind of twists it into, yeah, but I don't want to cluck like a chicken. Well, then don't cluck like a chicken. You don't have to. Nobody can make you do that. And
Yeah.
again, it's about your intention.
Craig, yeah, this is really interesting, and I'd like to move on in just a second into kind
Sure.
of some of the more tangible examples of how you're using your work in the arenas you're using it in. But I just wanted to touch upon just a couple of things which you mentioned earlier on, which I think is really relevant for the audience. And one is I sort of sense we're all in a constant state of hypnosis in a way. And I'm referring to things like here about the media. You touched upon the media. And I absolutely agree with you that I know how media works and I can see how things are framed and presented and language is used in a certain way to inform it, well, to influence an audience, to make them move into one way or another. And you see it all the time. There's certain keywords that are used in headlines and certain phrasing that's used, and it's to either make it more dramatic or more scary or more sad or whatever. There's like these trigger words that are used, and then there's visual cues. That you'll have. They'll slowly zoom in the camera on the principal that's in the seat, and the viewer kind of sees them because they're kind of waiting for them to cry or to see some form of emotional reaction. The way that they do this, it's so interesting. Now, in drama, I understand it because that's entertainment, and I understand what they're trying to do. But I think when you're doing that in media, in terms of, like, for example, in the news or something like that, that's really manipulation rather than information in my eyes. And I don't want to dwell too much on that, but I guess my question is to you, as a society, particularly in a Western society, are we all kind of under a constant state of hypnosis with all the information that's being fired at us all the time to keep us in a state of alert or keep us in a state of crisis or reduce us from relaxing or being less aware, maybe?
Yeah, it's an extraordinary thing to think about the amount of information we have access to.
Mm.
And you're right about, the certain headlines. You see those, I don't know if you call it this over there, but over here we call it clickbait.
Yeah,
And
clickbait.
it's those
Yeah,
headlines that it's like, you're not going to believe what this politician said to make
yeah.
everybody upset. I'm like, okay, what did he say? And you
Mm.
get this like, because you're going to get a little bit of a dopamine hit when you find out
Yeah.
the answer. They know how to grab you. And yeah, that's obviously a form of persuasion because you're clicking through potentially. You're clicking onto the article, you're clicking onto the picture, you're watching that video. And certainly the news programs that attract a lot of eyeballs, they know how to keep those eyeballs on that show.
Yeah.
And they have the
Well, everything's breaking news, isn't it? This is what I noticed.
yeah,
So on the BBC, everything, or Sky or whatever we have over here, everything's a big red banner across the screen all the time. Everything is breaking news, alert, this thing is happening, scary, scary,
yeah,
scary. It's like bang, bang, bang all the time.
yeah,
And if you actually look at it, because we have 24-hour news cycles things now and all this sort of stuff, they have to keep it exciting. They have to keep it alerting, be the first one to break it. It doesn't really matter if it's true or false or what the information is. It just break the news. And there's something about I don't know what it is. It's like it's the need to keep people in that state of threat. It feels like to me.
yeah. Because if everything's fine, why watch the news?
Yeah.
There have been lots and lots of good news radio shows back in the day, or podcasts, or newsletters, email newsletters, and they never get a lot of attention.
Yeah.
It's nice to hear those nice stories about the puppies and the helping the old lady across the street, and building the hospitals for the kids with cancer and all this stuff. It's heartwarming,
Mm.
it's wonderful, and you need that every now and then. But in terms of 24 hours a day, I don't think people would watch it, because if you
Yeah.
know everything's all right, you would just be calm and peaceful and happy. And so there's a certain, like we were just saying, it's almost they need you in a state of agitation all the time, because it does
Mm.
get you a little confused, because you don't know which way it's going to go. And so
Yeah.
if you're always
This.
in this heightened state of anxiety and stress, they,
Yeah.
they, they have a bit of control over you.
Yeah, it's so interesting, and I think with global events that are going on around the world. Before we started recording, we were talking about the hurricane in Florida, and and that's back to back news over here. It's every 2 minutes there's live footage of a street in Florida, and there's
Yeah.
some poor reporter trying to report on what's going on. And of course, it's horrific, it's awful, but it's this constant live documenting it, and there's wars going on around the world right now. There's so much conflict and nasty things going on, and it's like we're live streaming it constantly. It's not that we don't need to know about it, but they need to every minute update you. This is it. This is now what's happening, and this is now what's happening. It's like this need to be constantly firing out to you. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I almost relate that to a form of kind of mass hypnosis. It's kind of a mass
Yeah.
control of society in a way I guess it's to control, to keep people in line, or to keep people reacting or behaving in a certain way. I'm not deep enough thinker to understand really what all of that is, but it feels like hypnosis to me.
Yeah, yeah, and we can see that here in America. When we're recording this, we're a month before the big election coming up for
Mm,
president. And you can see that on both sides. And I don't want this to turn into a political discussion,
certainly.
but in terms of what we're talking about, and the kind of hypnosis that we can see on both sides. But sometimes you can see it in a way that's really insidious. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's tapping into those mindsets, isn't it? And I guess that's what populism is. And as I say, I don't really want to get too much into politics, but relating it to what you're talking about, it's kind of that influencing of people that are easily influenced to some extent, and they have a certain belief or a underlying mindset about a subject. And then the way to kind of pick them up is to trigger that as many different ways as you can trigger it. It's kind of neither here nor there whether it's true or not false. It's more about, does it evoke the reaction? Does it create
Yeah.
that feeling? And if it does, keep doing it until they keep doing that. It's like feeding them sugar.
Yeah.
And I certainly don't want to be disrespectful to people that, whatever people are into or whatever they vote for, that's neither here nor there to me. But in terms of the process of how it works, that seems to be what it's become. And I guess tying so that national example, if you like, or international example, and also thinking about earlier on, we was talking about entertainment. Have these, in a way, do these discredit, in a way, the actual wonderful work that hypnosis can actually do in kind of what you're doing? Is this draw away from the seriousness almost in terms of what its
Yeah.
actually potential is?
And that, yeah, I think you're making a good point, because it does. And I think that's where people get afraid of it, because,
Yeah,
well, I don't want to be controlled, because they see what's
sure.
happening in the media. They see what's happening on the Las Vegas shows or the comedy club shows or on TV. And so I don't want to do that. And that's why it's frustrating. Well, I wish they would have branded it some other thing.
Yeah.
But we're really not doing anything that you're not doing already. We're just doing it on purpose. And again, with your intention to heal. So again, we're not taking control, we're giving you back control by
Yeah.
maybe even pointing out the state of hypnosis you've been in,
Mm,
and dehypnotizing you from it. But it's not unlike, just going to a movie. And if you've ever been to a movie that you got really excited, or made you cry, or made you super sad and
mm,
depressed afterwards. Um, and I've seen movies that have taken me out for like a couple of days, just because
mm,
of the intensity of it and the depression around it and the sadness of it. Or it's super exciting. But it's like, It's a science fiction thing. It's in space. That
Mm.
it's not happening. Or the I remember the one when I was a little kid, it's Raiders of the Lost Ark, and you would even see the
Mm.
making of on television, like how they did it, and you see it
Yeah.
again, and it's still exciting.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's not real, and yet you can evoke a certain feeling state within your body. How are you doing that?
Mm.
You may be doing it unconsciously because of the music and because of the close-ups and the zoom outs and the fancy camera movements that they're doing is evoking a certain intensity or a certain excitement, whether they're in space using lasers or they're running away from a big rock rolling down upon them or whatever the thing is, or it's a really sad somebody in the family died and it's super sad at the end of the movie. It's
Yeah.
evoking an emotional response. How is it doing that? It's persuasion, influence, and you're allowing it to happen. You
Yeah.
bought the ticket to the movie. You knew what the movie was about.
Mm.
And you wanted that experience, so you allowed it to happen. You suspended your disbelief
Yeah.
and you allowed yourself to have a good time, or I don't know, have an experience if it's a sad movie. And so
Mm.
again, what if you want to heal? Again, we're not doing anything to you that you don't want to do. I can't make anybody quit smoking. I can't
Mm.
go to the world leaders and make them hypnotize them into creating world peace. Just as I can't
Mm.
hypnotize Elon Musk to write me $1 billion check. And
Yeah.
so I can't make anybody do anything they don't want to do. So imagine if you want to heal. Imagine if you want to heal that broken leg faster.
Yeah.
And just like the example you had when you were in hospital, and yeah, so I don't want to be here. So I'm going to almost pretend like I'm not, and I'm going to get dressed. And I'm going to,
Mm.
instead of having, and I don't know if this is what he did, but instead of having lunch in my room, I'm going to walk down to the cafeteria
Yeah. Sure.
or
Yeah.
or whatever. Or if allowed, I'm going to just walk up and down the hallways, or I'm going to help the nurses file paperwork or whatever.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
didn't want to be there, so he hypnotized himself to a certain extent that he wasn't
Yeah.
by getting dressed, by putting on his shoes, you know, and doing all that stuff. So
Yeah, no, I think it's so interesting. It really is. And I totally buy into it. And I say buy into it as if to say, not to suggest in any way that I shouldn't buy into it. But what I mean is I very much believe in that power of the mind. And I very much believe in, if you put yourself in a positive state and think very positively about stuff, positive things will happen because you naturally attract that to you, or you surround yourself in that situation. And if you put yourself in a very negative state, the opposite happens. These things, there is a knock-on effect. And nowadays, people would call that like karma or something, but actually, it's
yeah.
very logical. If you behave in a certain way or act in a certain way, then there's a knock-on domino effect to that, and I think we can see that all the time. So let's just talk about some of the really tangible stuff then, because this really interests me. You're obviously using what you're doing and the power of clinical hypnotherapy to really try and help people, I guess, see some form of clarity in whatever it is that's knocking them. So maybe they're particularly anxious about something. Maybe they're worried about an exam. Maybe they have to do a big presentation. Maybe they just don't feel great about life. Whatever it is that's affecting them. And you're trying to kind of change that mindset, I guess. Can you give sort of a tangible example of how you might use this, say in the professional world? There'll be a lot of business
Okay.
leaders and things listening to this. How would you use it with somebody like that?
And there's two aspects to this work. One is the actual kind of deeper healing work we might do in a session. If maybe the anxiety or the stress or the anger, the hurt, the pain, the wounds are related to maybe something that's happened in the past, whether a month ago or 50 years ago.
Mm.
There's that aspect of dealing with that hurt and that pain, and that's done in a safe way. This isn't talk therapy. We're using these various techniques and strategies to allow your mind to rewrite the code, so to speak, on how you experience that and how
Yeah.
you installed it within the subconscious mind, sort of like a file in a filing cabinet. Well, you're the one who put the file in the filing cabinet, so what do we need to do about it? Do we need just to rewrite it? Do we need to shred it and put something else in? And so that's the kind of metaphor of the work. But the part two of it is what you practice, you get better at.
Yeah.
And so part of the issue with anxiety is what is strongest within your mind is what you do over and over again. And we know this from Playing a musical instrument, you do music, you know that the more you practice, the better you're going to get, whether it's
Yeah.
violin or guitar or piano or whatever you're doing. We know this from dance or martial arts. You don't get a black belt on your first day of martial arts class. You have to practice. You have to get better at it.
Mm.
And riding a bicycle, driving a car, learning to walk as a child. What you practice, you get better at. So, what if you're practicing anxiety? What if you're practicing fear? What if you're practicing anger? We all know those people in our lives, whether they're family members or friends or work colleagues or something, where just the slightest thing will set them off into a rage.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, they've armored themselves with anger to protect themselves. And maybe, again, that was the best thing they could have done to keep themselves safe as a child.
Yeah.
They've practiced it to the point where now it's just an automatic response.
Sure.
It just comes up. It's the first thing it comes to. Why? Because they practiced. And so, again, part one is sort of the deeper healing work, maybe around that issue that had caused anger in the past. But now, what do you want instead? You want peace, you want joy, you want happiness, you want confidence, you want a mindset of success and working at your peak potential. There's practice that goes along with that. Any 10th degree black belt in Taekwondo is still practicing every day. Any
Yeah.
master musician, let's say Yo-Yo Ma, considered one of the greatest cello players alive today, is still practicing every day. The Dalai
Mm.
Lama, 90 years old, is still meditating every day.
Mm.
And read his books. Read the books by the Dalai Lama. He talks about the anger and the sorrow and despair of what's going on in Tibet, let alone the rest of the world. The guy was exiled out of Tibet in what, like 1957, 1956, something like that. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of anger there. They're still bulldozing down the monasteries, the Chinese government, to build roads and other buildings, and more likely just to give him the middle finger. And
Mm.
that's got to cause anger. And sorry,
Yeah.
it'd be odd if he didn't feel that. That's a normal, natural human response to an extraordinary situation. So every day he practices loving kindness and compassion. That's his work. That's what he does. And look at his life. He doesn't have a lot of the challenges in life that a lot of us have, children, being married, those
Mm.
kind of things. He has a staff of people to meet his every need and one. That's not to say he doesn't have great responsibility, but he
Mm.
doesn't have a lot of the life challenges that a lot of us do. Driving through traffic to get to work on time after our kids being sick all night or that. And
Yeah.
and yet he's still practicing at 90 years old. And so, what do we need to do to give more peace within our hearts and our minds and our bodies, more calm, more a mindset of success, more confidence? There's practice that goes along with it, and some of the issues I run into people, they say, "Well, I'm not confident. I just don't have confidence, and I want more of it, but I just don't even know what confidence is." Well, you do. You do have confidence. Everybody's pretty much confident that they can tie their shoes and
Yeah.
not have to think about it. Everybody's confident that, given their physical circumstances, that they can walk across the room or
Yeah.
drink a glass of water. You're confident that you can do that or make the bed or zip up your jacket. And those are
Mm.
maybe little things, zipping up your jacket, tying your shoes. But think about what that means to walk into the room where your shoes are and tie your shoes. You know you can do that, maybe without even thinking about it. You don't have to think about making the bow. There's confidence there. You are confident. Where do you feel that in your body?
Mm.
Well, okay, well, I feel it in my chest. Okay, what color is it? I guess it's gonna like a blue. Okay, make it bigger and spin it. Spin in a direction that makes it even bigger and faster. It's these little things that is like you can enhance well, you can look at a past event. Maybe in the sixth grade,
Mm.
you won the race, the running race, um, and and you won the gold medal or the blue ribbon or whatever. Okay, well, you can tap into that excitement, even though that was a long time ago and you were a child. But what did that feel like to win, to be at your best and be better than everybody else and win the gold medal? What did that feel like, even when you're 10 years old? Okay, now expand that and now let's look into the future. You're giving
Mm.
that presentation to the investors who are interested in your business. You're giving the keynote speech at the big conference. You're getting down on one knee to ask the person of that you're so in love with to marry you. Imagine doing that with confidence and strength and power. And so, even though you're just imagining these things and playing pretend, this is literally causing the brain to rewire itself in certain ways because the mind can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined. And this is most noticeable when somebody's having a nightmare. Maybe you, Willis, or people watching and have had the experience of it, or maybe their children have that experience of having a crazy, weird nightmare in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And it's something dumb like a hamburger chasing down the street throwing coconuts at you. It's dumb. It's never going to happen. And yet your mind in that instant can't tell whether that's real or imagined. And so since one of the main tasks of your unconscious mind is to protect you and to keep you safe and for survival, it has that shoot first, ask questions later safety protocol. So it'll turn on that stress response, even in deep sleep, even after a crazy dream like a hamburger throwing coconuts at you. It's ridiculous. It's never going to happen. And yet your mind's like, we got to protect Willis. We got to protect Craig. And so let's turn on the armor. Let's turn on the stress response. 300% more blood moving to big muscles of our arms and legs. It's got to come from somewhere. So it's shutting down the power in your immune system, on your digestive system. Your brain's creating adrenaline and cortisol. You've probably your watchers and listeners have heard of crazy stories of grandmothers lifting cars off of babies and things. That's adrenaline doing that. It's now coursing through your body. Maybe you're starting to sweat to cool down your body because your heart's racing so much. Literally changed your physiology through thought alone, no matter how crazy the thought. So again, let's use this to your advantage. You're already doing it, or you already have the potential to do it. So let's use this to our advantage. Let's do it on purpose. Yeah. And yes, you may not feel confident about giving that presentation at the big conference, but what if you pretended you did? How would that make you feel? I don't feel confident. You're confident you tied your shoes this morning, didn't you? Okay, where do you feel that? And let's start linking the confidence of tying your shoes and zipping up your jacket and buttoning your shirt to giving that speech in 2 months at the big conference. And so these are just little links to start practicing. And again, as much as one and done sessions are amazing, sometimes you got to build up to it. Because if you've practiced anxiety and fear for a really long time, maybe even decades, then it might take some time to kind of rewire yourself for peace and calm. And that doesn't necessarily mean you have to come to a hypnotherapy session every day, but it's like, what are you going to do every day? Just like the Dalai Lama meditates every day, just like Yo-Yo Ma practices the cello, just like any 10th degree black belt in Taekwondo is practicing every day. What do you want to practice? What do you want a black belt in? You want calm, peace, confidence, success, a mindset of moving into being peak potential. And so you practice who you want to be. And unfortunately, if we've gone into the habits of anxiety or stress or fear, that can mean that we're just practicing being that person.
And I suppose people say it to themselves as well, don't they? I mean, I would say I've been a musician. I've been performing all over the world now for over 25 years. And, I would say when I go on stage, I'm not really fazed by it because it's just become part of my routine. It's what I do. But what I realized as I was getting later on in life and the more and more I did it, it was actually I do still have that underlying kind of fear, anxiety of doing that performance. But what I realized is that actually what happens is it's like a switch of mind. It's like a character. It's like a mask. That's not really me on stage kind of doing that. It's the version of me delivering that performance. And it's why so many very famous artists, are massively extroverts on stage, but actually are well known for being very introverted, very shy, very quiet. It's like they boost themselves with this persona almost, which is saying everything's fine because it's not me, it's this. That's performing. And that I find that so interesting. But I think it relates a little bit, well, certainly relates to what you was just saying there, where you kind of, if you practice or tell yourself something enough times and you live it that way, then you will be it. And if you actually tell yourself something else and live it a different way, then you will become that. And that sounds like, trying to think about how you relate what you do to lots of different scenarios. I'm just thinking from the top of my head, like, students under a lot of stress. They're taking a lot of exams and tests and things these days. There's a lot of peer pressure about what's going on in the world. Social media has a massive effect on body image and all that kind of stuff. But certainly in the professional world, am I making enough money? Am I going to get that promotion? Am I going to be able to deliver that presentation? Can I do this keynote? All of these things are affecting people every single day from all walks of life. But it certainly sounds like what you're saying. You can tap into that. There is a real way of sort of changing your whole mindset about what that really is. And something like hypnotherapy, which originally so many people might have thought, well, firstly, may not have even considered it, but secondly, if they have considered it, I've related it back to what we was talking about earlier on, entertainment and doing silly things and whatever. But I think what you're explaining is actually we're not really doing anything, to the extent that you think we're doing it. We're actually we're arming you with what you already have, and just
Yeah.
helping you realize that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's taken away maybe the hurt, the pain, the wounds that have kept you stuck or blocked,
Yeah,
and then giving you what, and enhancing and strengthening a lot of the qualities you already have within you.
yeah,
And again, we're not like making you do anything you don't want to do. And we're not controlling you. We're actually giving you back control. Because up to that point, yes, you may have been hypnotized to the extent that you have blocked yourself from success.
yeah,
Because again, we could use the stereotypical um, money is the root of all evil, or you can't make more money than your parents did, or something like that. And
yeah,
you've hypnotized yourself with a certain mindset that has literally blocked you from maybe earning a certain income.
yeah.
Okay, well, you're allowed to change that. You're the one who put that in there.
Mm,
Or maybe, you saw that mirrored in the home, or maybe you literally were taught that in school. If you
yeah,
went to maybe a religious kind of school and they literally taught you money is the root of all evil. But you're allowed to decide that that isn't true anymore for you. It's
yeah,
your mind. And what in therapeutic hypnosis, what it helps you do is just move into being the person you want to be. Again,
yeah,
not do anything you're not already doing already in terms of, states of hypnosis or fancy. And that, I guess that's I think what trips up a lot of people is they think we're going to do something to you that you
yeah,
don't know how to do or that you can't do. Because I've run into people, oh, I can't be hypnotized. And if you've ever had that experience, and maybe you've seen a hypnotherapist who says, oh, it didn't work, I can't hypnotize. I hate to say it, but that person wasn't very good,
yeah,
because everybody can do this work. If you watch a television show, then you can do hypnosis. If
yeah,
you've ever drifted off into a daydreamy state because you were bored in a meeting or bored back in school, or just a sunny day and you're lying out under a tree and started daydreaming, watching the clouds go by, then you can do this work. Yeah.
yeah,
And so eyes open, eyes closed, and you're fully conscious of what's happening. In fact, a lot of the times in the work I do, we're having a conversation during it.
mm,
And you're explaining to me where you may feel the hurt. I feel in my
mm,
chest, it's a big red spiky ball. Okay, here's what I want you. I want you to reach in and grab it and pull it out. Okay, are you really doing that? Literally pulling out red spiky balls of anger and
mm,
trauma and pain? It's like, no. But your mind thinks you are, because the mind can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined, just like the nightmare.
yeah,
So let's use that on purpose and literally change your physiology and
yeah,
start rewiring your brain and remove the hurt and pain. And it's extraordinary the work people will do. I did this with a couple of weeks ago with a 77-year-old woman. All she said to me was, "I've just been dealing with anxiety." Fine, that's what we work with. When I send people the intake form to fill out online, they may just say one word, anxiety. They may write 6 paragraphs of extraordinarily detailed information. Great. What you need to do is what you need to do, and we'll heal in the way you need to heal. And so if you just want to deal with the anxiety, fine. So if we come to say it was Zoom session too, over Zoom, and just to get a little bit of background, I'm like, is this anxiety that's going on the last couple of months? The last couple of years? What are we talking about here? She says, pretty much since I was 19. This 77-year-old woman who's had chronic anxiety since she was 19. She did
mm,
not offer any more information. I did not ask what happened at 19. So,
mm,
but she knows what the problem is. And more
mm,
importantly, she knows what to do about it. So we're doing that process. I'm like, I want you, as we're moving into a more relaxed state, I said, I want you to just scan your body, and where you feel that anxiety, I want you to tell me and point to it with your hand. Where do you feel it? Well, I feel it in my head. Okay, what color is it? And now we're kind of disassociating from it by using parts of the brain to analyze it, so to speak, by creating
Mm.
shapes and colors and is it big? Is it small? Is it rough? Is it smooth? Describe it to me. So she's describing this out loud to me. All right. Now that red negative energy of anxiety that's in your head and everything else, the anger, the worry, and all the hurt and pain and the wounds that you've stored within there, I want you to pull it out. So he's going to start doing this. She starts pulling it out. 48 minutes she did this. 48 minutes. It was
Gosh.
extraordinary. And I would talk to her, and you're doing great. You're doing exactly right. The way you're doing it is exactly right. As it comes up, it comes out. As you feel it, you reveal it. As you reveal it, you heal it. You're doing it exactly right. Keep going, keep going. 48 minutes. She pulls this, and then she does this. She just opens her eyes, says, "It's gone. I'm done."
Mm.
Because I'm not doing the work. I'm not fixing anybody. And
Yeah.
hypnotherapy in and of itself isn't fixing anybody. You're fixing yourself. Yes, we're using these metaphors, these symbolisms, the storytelling, these allegories, but you're doing the healing work.
Yeah.
And so I had her close her eyes again. We kind of finished up with a little bit of a part two, installing new stuff because nature abhors a vacuum, as they say. And so let's fill you up. Let's fill the void now with joy, happiness, love, compassion, whatever it is you want. And in fact, let's go back to that child that got hurt. And let's
Mm.
offer that child all the love and the compassion and the strength and power that child needed. And now you can heal the child. And so we do this work, and it was about an hour and a half. And she came back a couple weeks later to work on something else. And then she told me the story of what was going on, of the kind of abuse she was under. But she didn't tell me that at the beginning, but she knew what to heal.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it got represented through the unconscious mind, through color, through shape, through feeling state,
Mm.
or a heaviness. It's like a black heaviness. Fine, pull that out. Subconscious mind will show you through metaphor or symbolism the hurt and the pain. And so it's actually comes, not tangible, but somewhat tangible within the subconscious mind to like, okay, like pull, now you know what to pull out, all that blackness, all that heaviness, or those spiky,
Yeah.
somebody was like black ping pong balls, pull out all the
Mm.
black ping pong balls, you know.
Mm.
And so the subconscious mind is showing you the hurt and pain. Okay, we'll pull it out now. Keep the good stuff, but pull out all the hurt and pain that you're seeing.
Yeah.
And whether you know what it is or it's unknown to you, your subconscious mind is showing you this, and this needs to be removed now. So remove it.
Yeah. And it's amazing as well. And, I think it's really interesting about, particularly with anxiety and stress. I would say I'm a pretty anxious person. I accept I'm quite anxious, and I have been, particularly in the later years. I've really felt anxiety, and it's very, very physical. It is very physical, and a lot of people, kind of disregard it as being a cry for attention or whatever. It's not. It's a very physical feeling. It feels painful. And it's all in your mind. It's completely in your
Yeah.
mind. It really is. And I'm very aware of that. But when those happens, when they call it, an anxiety attack or a panic attack or whatever, it's all mind controlling it. And actually physically, you're well, but you don't feel well. It's so awful. And I really think these sort of practices, particularly around hypnotherapy, I think would be so useful particularly in early intervention in life, for students, for young people, really kind of trying to help them regulate and understand what's going on, rather than kind of having to do this reactive thing where they get themselves into such a state and then they grow up with this anxiety, and it follows them into their professional lives and their love life and everything that it goes with it. And it's because they're carrying almost like this baggage all the time, and it's just dragging and dragging and dragging. I really think this sort of stuff would be so useful if it was done in an early intervention way. If it became a practice that you did, and you was taught this throughout schooling or something. Could you see that happening one day?
Yeah, kids are great at this work because who better to have amazing imaginations and being able to play pretend? I worked
Yeah.
with a 10-year-old a few months ago, and he was struggling with chronic nightmares for years. And
Mm.
his uh, my wife knew her, knew the mom, and they were talking about it. And Christina, she said, "Oh, you need to try hypnotherapy with him." It's like, "Oh, I didn't know kids could do that." Okay, yeah, let's try that. I'll try anything. And that's the thing with the hypnotherapy. It usually lasts on the list. So you get
Mm.
the people without hope who have tried
Mm.
everything, years and years of talk therapy. They've gone to the doctors. They had the MRIs. The pain can't be found.
Mm.
There's no reason to have all that low back pain or that hip pain. And
Yeah.
so we are the modality of last resort.
Mm.
And what's extraordinary about it is that the healing people walk away with. And this 10-year-old struggling with chronic nightmares pretty much every night, to the point that he wakes up screaming, and one of the parents, mom or dad, has to lie in bed with him the rest of the night. And they've done the counseling, they've done all the things you're supposed to do at the top of the list. So at the bottom of the list, hypnotherapy. And so this kid comes in. I talk to the mom over the phone a little bit, and she's going to be in the room. So we're going to do, mom, the child, and myself. We're going to be in a room together. And of course, we could have done this over Zoom too, but they're here in town. And beforehand, I found out that he was a big Star Wars fan. And one of the shows he really likes is The Mandalorian. And so, if you know the Mandalorian show, they're kind of these armored guys with the lasers and the jetpacks and all the things, and they're guardians. And there's also baby Yodas in there, Grogu, I think is, if I'm pronouncing the name right. And and so I was started off with using the analogies of Star Wars with him as he's sitting in the waiting room. It's like, I know you like Star Wars, and so we're going to do a lot of work together. And when you're ready, and here's the language, the persuasion, the influence. When you are ready to be done with this, get up out of this chair
Mm.
and let's go to the office.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he can sit there for the rest of his life, for all that matters,
Mm.
or until we close up and turn off the lights.
Mm.
But he got up because he was ready to be done with it. And so
Yeah.
I had closed my office door and I said, okay, I just want to make sure, because when you open this door and you walk through that door, you're going to be done with it. But I want to make sure that you're ready to do that. When you're ready to do that, and he opens the door. Now
Mm.
there's a couple of seats here. Choose the seat that you need to sit in to remove. He's doing all these things. He's picking the seat. He's opening the door. He's getting out of the chair. And so we're doing this work, and it's just a 45-minute session because it's child, and
Mm.
you don't want to go too long. And part of the um, work was just like, I want you to, if people know the show The Mandalorian, there's this one scene where Baby Yoda kind of forms this bubble of energy around him, kind of floating up and having this meditative energy field around him. And so it's like, okay, I want you to pretend that Baby Yoda is across from you, and I want you to put that energy field around you. And now with that energy field, I want you to pretend you're sitting in bed and you're ready to go to sleep. And at the four corners of your bed are Mandalorians. Above you and below you are Mandalorians guarding you. And now I want you to pretend that those monsters come at you and see what happens
Mm.
to them now. And so
Mm.
we run the scenario. Now he's taking control of the nightmare. And so, okay, we did it we did it with monsters. Let's do it with the aliens. Okay, now I have the aliens come at you and see what happens to them. Of course, they're going to get zapped by the Mandalorians. They're going to get dissipated by the energy field. And so let's do it with the ghouls or whatever. And so now all of them, all together at once. Now see what happens to them. And when you're ready to be done with this, when you know you have control of this, open your eyes and walk out the door. Opened his eyes, walked out the door, never had a nightmare again.
That's
You know?
amazing. It's incredible.
Yeah. And again, it's not that not I'm tooting my own horn or saying I did this. He did this. He was
Yeah.
working it out in his own mind. Yeah, we're using the metaphors of the armored guards around his bed using Star Wars symbolisms, but he was doing it himself, and
Yeah.
he took control of it instead of the nightmare controlling him. He took control of it,
Yeah.
and after 2 or 3 years of chronic nightmares almost every night, that 145-minute session, he never had another nightmare. I saw her like last week. It says it's been like two months or so, maybe 3 months at this point, of no nightmares. And the
Yeah.
more he doesn't have nightmares, the stronger that becomes more of who he is. If that makes sense. The more he does
Yeah.
not have nightmares, the more he is in control of it. and he's
Yeah, sure,
rewired his
sure.
brain. And
Yeah,
imagine what that's going to do to his confidence when
yeah.
later on, when he's 12 or he's 15, he's 18, and his mom says, "Do you remember when you erased all those nightmares after years and years? You did that. That's how
Mm,
strong and powerful you are. So you think you can do this math test now? You think you can
yeah.
apply for that job? You think you can apply for a university?
Mm,
Imagine what that's going to do for his confidence." So again, probably,
yeah.
long answer to a short question or a short statement. It's like, yeah, imagine kids doing this and getting in control of their emotions and their mindset and what that would
Yeah.
do to the world.
Yeah, Craig. I mean, I absolutely agree. I think the power of the mind is just incredible. And if anybody actually doubts this stuff in terms of just thinking about the power of the mind, we do this every day and we all say it in conversation. You know, how often do you hear somebody say, I really feel like the weight's been lifted off my shoulders when there's been some form of relief or something, you know,
Yeah.
and there is no physical weight on your shoulders. You're not holding anything. You know, the
Right.
weight is all in your mind, right? You know,
Yeah.
you feel, but you feel relieved. You feel lighter, you feel more relaxed, you breathe more deeper, all of this stuff. It's incredibly powerful. And when it's reversed and then it's the other way around and you're in that state of anxiousness or worry or stress, they say stress is the biggest killer. You know, it's
Yeah.
because as you've described earlier on, you physiologically your body's doing all of this stuff because it thinks you're in this state of fight or flight, you're in a state of shock or whatever. Um, and actually, you know, what you're doing is you're really trying to help people release that, but control it themselves, take control of
Right.
it rather than be dominated by it. Which I just find just so inspiring. I just think we need to do so much more of this sort of thing. Definitely an early intervention so that people can learn this stuff. Almost, it's kind of like learning how to live. We're in a world of crisis, of shock, of so much information, so much stuff. We're all consumed by things every single day. And I'm not sure many people around the world, all of us, you know, I'm not sure we really know how to handle this. There's just so much stuff going on. And I think if you had those techniques that said, you know, right from childhood, from early intervention at school, that said, look, this is what's happening. This is how you control it. This is how you regulate. This is how you harness what's going on. I think that would be just so powerful, really.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think a lot of people scratch their heads at least here in the United States at the education system. It's like, okay, I get calculus and algebra, but man, what about learning how to deal with relationships?
Yeah, yeah,
What about learning how to what a mortgage is or how to buy a car?
mm,
These aspects of life that uh, can you stumble around in the
yeah,
dark, it seems like trying to figure out how to make it work. And if kids had the power to control their own nervous system, and yeah, to a certain extent, you need that anxiety and fear. You never want to get rid of that anxiety
no,
and fear. That's what keeps you from walking down the dark alley at midnight because it's a
yeah,
shortcut home. No, take to the lighted streets, keep to the crowded streets. You're safer, even though it's going to take an extra 15 minutes. But it's that
mm,
fear, that anxiety here, at least in the Southwest of the United States. Down, I live up in the mountains here in Arizona, but down south, of course, in the desert, you're walking out in nature, having a beautiful day. There's a rattlesnake in the trail. Rattlesnake is
mm,
not your friend. Move away
mm,
from it. And that
yeah,
fear of hearing that rattle, like you're going to
mm,
jolt and you're going to move back. You want
mm,
that. That keeps you safe. The fight in the bar or the restaurant
yeah,
or out in the street or something, move away from it. Keep us,
mm,
and that fear and that anxiety is going to help you see dangerous situations that are really dangerous and keep you safe. The problem is when we associate some of that fear and anxiety to situations that aren't dangerous to us.
yeah,
We're sitting in the office, we're head of marketing or something in the office, and the two accountants next door, Bill and Fred, start arguing because once again the numbers aren't adding up at the end of the month, so they start shouting at each other, and
mm,
everybody else rolls their eyes. There's Bill and Fred doing their thing again. But to you, maybe you start feeling really anxious and
mm,
afraid and feeling like you want to hide and get small because maybe there was a lot of shouting and arguing growing up and your parents
mm,
divorced and there was a lot of anger there and that makes you
mm,
afraid.
mm,
And you never resolve that. So those instructions to hide when you heard shouting is still there. So when you hear Bill and Fred next door shouting at each other about the accounting numbers, it has nothing to do with you. And it's not like
mm,
a fight's going to break out. They're just shouting at each other like they usually do. Everybody else thinks it's funny, but to you, it's frightening. And so
Mm.
again, in this example, you've sort of hypnotized yourself to feel anxious and afraid when you hear loud voices shouting at each other in an angry way. And so, in a sense, like you've said before, we mentioned before, we're all sort of hypnotized in
Mm.
some form or another. It's just you get to decide how that works for you. And if you
Yeah.
need, a facilitator, a coach in the form of a hypnotherapist to help with some of these things, yeah, absolutely use that. Find somebody who's highly educated.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, at least here in the United States, you can have a minimal training and call yourself a hypnotherapist. And so
Mm.
really look to see who is in your area if you want to work in person, or a lot of this stuff is happening over Zoom nowadays. In fact, I
Mm.
probably 85% of my sessions are over Zoom. I just worked with somebody in Vienna last week. And again, not to toot my horn or anything, but just like this is the world nowadays.
Yeah,
I
sure.
called my business Arizona Integrative Hypnotherapy because I just thought I was going to work in Flagstaff and Phoenix. And now,
Mm.
since COVID, this whole world has been open due to Zoom and other things now, StreamYard and Riverside and all these other things. And and so it works really well over Zoom if that's the way you want to go, because what the research has shown is whether it's talk therapy or a doctor's appointment or hypnotherapy or some other kind of therapy, uh, like psychotherapy or coaching, it works really well over Zoom because people feel comfortable and relaxed in their homes.
Yeah.
They feel safe in their homes. So it works really well. Half the job's already done because you're already safe and feeling relaxed. And if you live in a large city, London, Phoenix, New York, you don't have to drive across town or take the tube, take the subway to
Yeah.
get to your appointment on time. You just walk across the room, turn on your laptop, and there you are. And so
Yeah.
hypnotherapy works really well. In fact, there's some research that even shows Zoom sessions work better than in person because of that, because of
Yeah.
relaxation and the feeling safe in your own home. So
Mm.
yeah.
Just in closing for the audience, what would you say? What's the key takeaway you want people to take away from this? It, you've sort of really explained what's going on with hypnotherapy and actually how it works and what it's actually doing. I think you've articulated that really well,
Thank you.
and I think that's really interesting. But for people that are still really anxious about this, just about everyone I know is living in with some form of anxiety, stress, worry because of various things, their business, their job, their family, their love life, their money. It's all around us. What do you want people to take away? Do they really need to take action and purposely really explore these sort of therapies to improve their life and make it sort of an active decision to do that?
I think so. If you're not growing, you're dying, as they say in the personal growth world. And so take control, take back control. And again, hypnotherapy isn't to take control away from you, it's to give it back to you. Because in a sense, as we've discussed over the last 90 minutes or so, it's like we're already in a state of hypnosis, especially if you're dealing with this chronic anxiety or anger or fear or trauma. Again,
Mm.
it may all be unconscious. You don't even know why you're anxious. And so it's really giving you back control. And so whether you're doing stuff on your own, there's certainly lots of recordings you can listen to on YouTube, or if you find there in the UK, there's Marissa Peers. She has some great stuff, and she teaches a lot of people. So look out for Marissa Peers and her students there in the UK. But if you want to work with somebody, understand that we're not here to fix you. You're going to fix yourself. This isn't talk therapy. We're not going to be doing 80, 90, 100 sessions over 2 years talking about your
Mm.
problems, because oftentimes you may not be talking about the real problem. You might be talking about a problem or a few problems, but you actually might not be talking about the problem that's been causing all the issues. That's why people come to me and they say, yeah, I've been doing talk therapy for 2 years and I don't feel any better. Otherwise,
Mm.
you weren't working on the right thing. And
Yeah.
you're looking outside of yourself to somebody else to heal you. And yeah, we get that. I mean, yeah, take me to the doctor if my appendix is about to burst. If I break my leg, take me to the doctor. Or if I
Mm.
want a massage because of all the stress in my shoulders, yeah, I want that person to heal me. But there's other modalities where you can fix yourself. And hypnotherapy is great at tapping into your own power to heal. And so if this interests you, certainly do your research. Go to Google Scholar, look up the research. If you're dealing with
Mm,
anxiety or pain control or whatever it may be, phobias, and look at the actual research published in peer-reviewed scientific and medical journals. And if I was to leave anybody with, again, one thing, I've already said it before, but I think it's super important. What you practice, you get better at. What is strongest within your mind is what you do over and over again. So that's great if you're practicing joy and happiness and confidence or loving kindness and compassion like the Dalai Lama. But what if you're practicing fear? What if you're practicing anxiety? What if you're practicing hate and rage and anger? How's your day going
mm,
to go? And
mm.
so that's where the responsibility of the person is. It's like, well, yeah, maybe 15 minutes a day, you need to be doing some practicing, whether that's finding a cool recording on YouTube or working with somebody like a hypnotherapist or some sort of transformational coach or even a talk therapist, certainly.
Yeah.
Find something to just become a person who can live their best life. You can do it.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just, you might have to take off some of the armor, is
Mm.
all. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think I totally get it. I really believe in just everything you've said because it all just makes perfect sense, and it's really actually quite obvious. Like, strangely enough, everything we've discussed maybe in the last 90 minutes, it's all obvious and it's all there. It's so hard for people to recognize it when they're in that sort of state of panic or anxiety or worry or stress. They just can't, they say, you can't see the wood for the trees kind of thing. It's that it really is about taking control. But I think what I also think would be nice for people to take away is if they do take up a session, say with someone like yourself, and they really want to try out this hypnotherapy and start addressing some of this stuff, there's also nothing to panic about in that sort of sense. Nothing physically is going to happen to you. So let's remove some of those taboos.
Yeah.
This is not a procedure, or
Yeah. And you
and
can't get
there's
stuck
someone.
in hypnosis. And a lot of
Yeah,
people say, well, what happens if the internet goes out or the power goes out? Am I going to get stuck in hypnosis? It's, no, you just wake up. If you don't hear my voice for a minute, because I talk a lot, obviously, in the last 90
yeah,
minutes, I talk a lot. And
yeah.
so if you don't hear my voice from me, you're like, what's going on? You're going to wake up. There's a recording on YouTube. Richard Nongard, great hypnotherapist, a psychotherapist here in America. He has a hypnotherapy recording on YouTube. I forget what, anxiety or something. And at the very end, he says, I'm going to count from 5 to 1. And on 1, you'll be fully aware and alert and go about your day feeling excited and happy and fully at peace. 5, getting more and more awake. 4, coming back to this place we like to call reality. 3, 2, feeling so good and wonderful. And everybody just have an amazing, wonderful day. He never says 1. He forgot to say 1. And this video has something like 2 million hits on it because it's been out for like 15 years. There aren't 2 million people still in hypnosis because he forgot to say 1. And so you can't get stuck in this stuff. I know you see that on the movies, and that's funny because it's in the movies, but this isn't, it's just a way to make
Yeah.
the plot point forward. You can't get stuck
Great.
in
Yeah.
this.
What I really wanted to get from this podcast really was two sides, really. One was to really delve into the very deep the effects, the clinical effect that hypnosis can have. You've really articulated that well, and I find it so interesting. And it's also very obvious, and I think we should all be doing this sort of stuff. I really do. But the other side I wanted to do is just kind of break some of the taboos and some of the
Yeah.
nonsense and the stuff around it. There's nothing to be fearful about here. You've said it multiple times in the podcast. If anything, I'm dehypnotizing you. I'm helping you. You're helping yourself. I'm just helping you realize it. To some extent. It's and so if you are feeling at that state where we all are. We all have these issues with anxiety. We all have these issues of worry and fear and all this kind of stuff. The first step is recognizing that and actually seeking out some way to change that, isn't it? And I think
Yeah.
if you do that, hypnotherapy certainly has got to be one of those modalities that people should consider because it clearly offers so much benefit. So I totally get it. Craig, if people want to reach out to you, where do they go? What do they want to, if they want to see
Best
you?
way is just finding my website. Again, I'm in Flagstaff, Arizona. So the name of my practice is Arizona Integrative Hypnotherapy, which I know is a mouthful. But if you just Google search Flagstaff Hypnosis, I'll come up. You'll see me, Arizona Integrative Hypnotherapy. Or maybe even simpler to remember is my test anxiety course, ACE Any Test. And that's an easy one to remember, aceanytest.com. and you just email me through either one. We'll get on a consultation call, a free consultation call. We'll just discuss what you want to work on. We'll do it over Zoom or the phone, and just see if this is the right fit for you.
Yeah, well, it definitely works because we're on Zoom, and you're up in the mountains in the US there, and I'm here in the UK, and we're 8 hours apart, and here we are in a full-on conversation. So there are no barriers. So if you're feeling that, look it up, and reach out, and at least just start the conversation. You may be amazed about what might come off the back of it. Craig, this has been so interesting. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time. Thank you for coming on with the podcast. And really just enlightening us all into hypnotherapy. It's just really interesting. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Willis. I really appreciate the invitation. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. Excited to be on your show. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All the best. Take care.
Thanks.